outlining abuse of our nation's spy program. That release could come at any moment. Ed Henry's following the latest amid new calls for the removal of House Intelligence Chairman, Republican Devin Nunes.
This is a cover-up by the Republicans to protect President Trump in this investigation.
We'll have fresh reaction from Deputy White House Press Secretary Hogan Gidley, and Stirewalt is ready to weigh in. Plus, we'll dig deeper with former federal agents Derek Maltz and Dan Bongino into reaction from inside the FBI to the memo that's sending shockwaves across the country. And a pro-Israel group fought the IRS for tax-exempt status for 7 long years under the Obama administration. The leader of that group finally getting answers. Joins us live. Hello and welcome to Fox News at Night. I'm Shannon Bream in Washington. New tonight, capping a week which began with his State of the Union address and is about to close with the release of that controversial House Intelligence Committee surveillance memo. President Trump appears to be going on offense against his critics. These new comments from the president coming in just a short while ago, speaking at the RNC winter meeting right here in Washington.
You know, the name is Resist. That's the name of their movement. Resist. That's all they do is resist. I don't know if they're good at it. They can't be too good at it because we're passing a lot of things.
Those comments directed at Democrats over the DACA negotiations, but the White House is poised to further infuriate its critics with the release of a memo about alleged surveillance abuses by the government. Chief National Correspondent Ed Henry joins us on that story. Hey, Ed.
Shannon, good to see you. And breaking tonight, 2 senior Republicans are now pushing back at reports that this Republican memo will not live up to the hype, telling me there are 4 separate explosive revelations about surveillance during the Obama administration that have not yet leaked out ahead of tomorrow's expected release. If that turns out to be true, it will be vindication for Republican Devin Nunes, who has suggested this memo will reveal abuses of the FISA law by top FBI and Justice Department officials dating back to the Obama years. A lot on the line for Nunes. As you saw, House Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi today called on Speaker Paul Ryan to remove Nunes as intelligence chairman, charging his actions have been a, quote, dangerous attack on law enforcement and is all meant to help President Trump politically. A senior White House official suggested the president is going to tell Congress, likely tomorrow, he does not object to the public release of this memo. Then it would be up to the House to actually release it to the public. The top Democrat on that panel, Adam Schiff, he's been very outspoken, and today he pushed back on Nunes' claim that he made only minor grammatical fixes to the original memo before sending it to the White House. The Democrat charging that it was, quote, secretly altered to tar both the FBI and the Justice Department. But that was a claim that was hotly disputed by various Republicans today, including Speaker Ryan, who seemed to give Nunes some air cover.
I think the FBI is exactly right. This memo is really a spin on not just a set of particular documents, but broader classified information than that, because of serious and material omissions is inaccurate and gives a very misleading impression.
This memo is not an indictment of the FBI, of the Department of Justice. It does not impugn the Mueller investigation or the Deputy Attorney General. What it is the Congress's legitimate function of oversight to make sure that the FISA process is being used correctly, and that if it wasn't being used correctly, that needs to come to light and people need to be held accountable.
Now, also new tonight, the former FBI Director James Comey went off on Twitter, invoking McCarthyism, writing, all should appreciate the FBI speaking up. I wish more of our leaders would, but take heart. American history shows that in the long run, weasels and liars never hold the field, so long as good people stand up. Not a lot of schools or streets named for Joe McCarthy. Now, the mention of the FBI speaking up is an apparent reference to the statement put out by his successor, the current FBI Director Christopher Wray, that the memo should be kept under wraps. Now, CNN today claimed that Wray was threatening to resign if the president lets this memo go public. NBC News knocking that down as false. We should note that people who have seen this Republican memo have told us privately that James Comey may be implicated in all of this, which might explain his fiery tweet. Shannon.
All right, we will debate that coming up. Ed Henry, thank you very much. The case of this top secret memo has captivated Washington and dominated media coverage. Joining us now, White House Deputy Press Secretary Hogan Gidley, also a special assistant to the president. Great to have you with us, Hogan.
Thanks so much for having me on.
Okay, so let's talk about this memo. There were accusations late last night. We covered them breaking as this show was going on, that there were some alterations to the memo before it went to the White House. There were questions about whether the White House had anything to do with the alterations. What can you tell us?
We had nothing to do with any alterations. As you know, Shannon, that this document it was generated in Congress. It was sent to the White House. A final copy was sent to the White House. What we received, the president takes very seriously, and he met with the relevant stakeholders, people in the White House counsel, also on the national security team. They poured through the document to find out the next steps and what they should do with it. I know I can report tonight that we are kind of moving into the final stages of that, but the president has not made a decision yet.
But everybody thinks we're going to see it tomorrow.
Everybody does, but there's a process in place here, and obviously the president would never do anything to put the American people at risk or harm our national security in any way. But that's why the process takes so long. And there's a 5-day window there where the president has to go through the document. He did that with the team, and they'll make a decision soon.
Okay, with that in mind, how was this statement from the FBI, I'll read part of it, received over at the White House? The FBI was provided a limited opportunity to review this memo the day before the committee voted to release it. As expressed during our initial review, we have grave concerns about material omissions of fact that fundamentally impact the memo's accuracy.
Right. And again, this is coming to us already finished. Whatever squabbles they have over in Congress, whatever the FBI is saying that Congressman Nunes did, then that's up to them. We received the document, and we're doing exactly what we're outlined to do by law to make sure that it protects the American people, and that if it does get declassified, that there is nothing in there that would harm this nation.
Okay, I want to read a couple of analyses of where the president is on this memo and give you a chance to respond. From CNN, they say this: President Donald Trump continues to tell his associates he believes the highly controversial Republican memo alleging the FBI abused its surveillance tools could help discredit the Russia investigation. Multiple sources familiar with the White House discussions said. Does he think that this memo is going to discredit the Mueller investigation?
I'm not going to get ahead of anything the president is going to say. I can tell you he's read the document, he's poured through it meticulously, and he's met with the relevant stakeholders to figure out what to do. Because, as I said, this is very important, not just for what actually occurred. The president's been very clear. Obviously, he supports the rank and file members of the FBI. He believes that they are hardworking. He believes they deserve our respect and appreciation. But it's obvious, too, that at the senior levels, that reports have shown some serious biases against Donald Trump and biases for Hillary Clinton during the Hillary Clinton investigation. That's troublesome. And he's all about transparency. He wants these things to come out. Hadn't made a decision yet, but he definitely wants he believes that sunlight is best in this situation.
Okay, CNN also saying this, that Trump is so frustrated with the Russia investigation and in turn Rod Rosenstein, the Deputy Attorney General, that he may look for any opportunity to build a case for Rosenstein's firing.
I mean, I can't speak to that. I haven't talked to the president about that. But again, this process, it's so public because every time someone, people are trying to leak information out about this, but I can tell you so many reports were brought out today on various aspects of this memo, about the aspects of the process, and they were all wrong. I mean, several reports saying he was going to release it before he took off today to fly to West Virginia. Didn't happen. And we were all sitting at the White House just kind of laughing at who's saying these things, because obviously it's that old adage that the people who know don't talk and the people who don't know talk. And that's obvious today.
Okay, let's talk about immigration, because the president has made a 4-pillar proposal that some on the right don't like because they're upset about 1.8 million people now being eligible for a pathway to citizenship who are here illegally. The left is unhappy about wall and all these other kind of things, too. The president spoke to this.
They're unhappy about a lot of things.
They
Let's just be
are, a lot of
honest.
this.
Okay.
But the president spoke to this tonight, and the Democrats, and where they are on immigration.
You know, the Democrats are AWOL. They're missing in action. We're saying, where are they? We have a proposal. We never hear from them. Because I don't think they want to solve the DACA problem. I think they want to talk about it. I think they want to obstruct. You know, the name is Resist. That's the name of their movement. Resist. That's all they do is resist.
Will they find a way to meet in the middle and get something done before March 5th?
Right. What are they resisting? lower taxes, more money in their pocket? Are they resisting
a wall that they don't want, for one thing?
Right, a wall. But look, they all voted for that wall in 2006 and 2013. I mean, it's just ridiculous. The Democrats are playing politics with people's lives, and you saw that in the shutdown. The president did a masterful job exposing exactly what Democrats are about. They want to shut down the government, put our military at risk, put our 8.9 million children at risk who receive health care from the government, all to protect hundreds of thousands of people who are here illegally and unlawfully, as opposed to the hundreds of millions of American citizens. That line has been clearly drawn. The president comes forward and says, not only am I going to give a really strong border security plan that ends chain migration, ends the visa lottery, things Democrats used to be for, by the way, protects our nation, gives the border security exactly what they need. I'm even going to put out 1.8 million people with a possibility for a pathway to citizenship. That's 3 times more than President Obama offered, and the Democrats still don't want it. It's just baffling.
We'll keep watching, as we know you will. Hogan, always good to see you.
Thank you,
Thanks
Shannon.
for coming in.
Great to see you.
Or the contentious tax overhaul here in Washington is starting to deliver in the form of bigger American paychecks. Plus, you've no doubt heard about the 300-plus companies passing along benefits to their workers and bonuses. One of the latest, a once struggling hostess giving employee bonuses and a year of free snacks as a result of new GOP tax legislation. But that has not stopped Democrats from characterizing the cuts as crumbs. Well, in this case, there are some crumbs involved. Caroline Shively joins us with details. Hi, Caroline.
Hey to you, Shannon. It was a twofer for the president today. He took a shot at Nancy Pelosi and got in a jab at Hillary Clinton in the process. The president compared House Minority Leader Pelosi's comments that bonuses coming out of Republican tax cuts are crumbs to one of Clinton's most memorable lines during the 2016 campaign, where she called some of Mr. Trump's supporters deplorable. Here's the president today.
Corporations giving tremendous bonuses to everybody that Nancy Pelosi called crumbs. That was that could be like deplorable. Does that make sense? Deplorable and crumbs? When people are getting $2,000 and $3,000 and $1,000, that's not crumbs. It's a lot of money.
The crumbs line is one that Pelosi has used a number of times, including today at the Trump Tax Town Hall in Massachusetts. The minority leader says there is no comparison between the $1.5 trillion tax package that slashed corporate rates and the smaller bonuses and raises that companies have passed on to their workers.
While they give banquets to the rest of to the high end, to the top 1%, to corporate America, they're giving, I say crumbs, they mock me in ads for saying it, compared to the banquet they give at the high end.
Pelosi's office also had this to say after the president's comments today. What's deplorable is Republicans' desperate effort to hide the multi-billion-dollar corporate windfalls of the GOP tax scam behind a handful of meager one-time bonuses. The casual dishonesty of taking Leader Pelosi's words out of context is nothing compared to the dishonesty of Republican sales pitch on their tax scam itself. According to Americans for Tax Reform, at least 300 companies have announced bonuses, raises, or that they're adding to 401k programs, ranging from $2,500 in stocks at Apple to smaller companies raising their minimum wages by $1 or $2 an hour. Shannon?
Caroline Shively, thank you very much.
You bet.
And by the way, we just got a brand new tweet from the president at this late hour. He says this: the Democrats aren't calling about DACA. Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer have to get moving fast or they'll disappoint you again. We have a great chance to make a deal, or blame the Dems. March 5th is coming up fast. Okay, from immigration to tax cuts to the memo, much to discuss with Fox News politics editor Chris Stirewalt. Hi.
What up?
Late night tweeting.
Thursday night.
It's tweet night, apparently.
That's right. Exactly.
Maybe at the White House. Okay, so where do we start here? We have next week, February 8th, money runs out.
Right.
Will we have a deal by then?
So I think the president is tweeting here and trying to advantage the Republicans about whose fault it's going to be. So the Republicans won round one of the shutdown Olympics. As I have said to you before, this bobsled run is not near done. Mm-hmm. There are going to probably be multiple shutdowns, I'm going to guess, in this year. Unless, and this is the big unless, Republicans can really apply pressure to Democrats. And to really apply pressure to Democrats, they've got to pass legislation through the House, and they've got to have a bill that can get 50 Republicans in the Senate. If they can't do that, they're going to let the Democrats off the hook, and then pressure for the shutdown starts to shift back on the GOP.
Okay, interesting piece in the New York Times saying that Trump has got the Democrats right where he wants them. Now, there's a quote in there from a Princeton political scientist who says, his name is Nolan McCarty, he says that if the Democrats don't go along with this deal, blocking it would allow the Trump administration to suggest that the Democrats were willing to trade Dreamers for lottery and chain migration, as well as position them as soft on border security. So he says, listen, the president's kind of backed them into a corner.
Well, and the crazy rhetoric that has come from some Democrats talking about this is racist and this is all of these things, that doesn't help their case either, because these are, as Hogan Gidley was pointing out, these are views that even very recently were not uncommon or considered inhumane among Democrats. Look, there's a 70% position in America on immigration, which is most of the country, the overwhelming majority of the electorate wants some kind of amnesty. They want amnesty, but they also want border security.
They don't like that word, though, because when you use that, a lot of people say, no, that's not exactly what I want. Maybe some kind of legal status or something else, but I don't know about
people in hell want ice water, too. But the majority of Americans, the overwhelming majority of Americans, favor amnesty. They favor allowing these people to be allowed to stay.
Some kind of resolution.
That in exchange for more border security and tougher enforcement. It's not about the ones that are here. It's about the next wave. And the whole effort in Washington, this is all colored by what happened in 1986 with Ronald Reagan, where there was an amnesty, yay.
And not a lot of enforcement.
But then the enforcement wasn't there on the other side. And that's the one that Trump can deliver on. And that's why he is in a unique position to actually get a deal done if his party will help him. And if what he told his members when he was at the Greenbrier today, when he was at the Greenbrier today, if they'll take his word to heart and let him make a deal and give him the votes he needs on a bill and not pander to their bases and just try to suck up to primary voters, they could get this done. It'd be a big deal.
I also love the Greenbrier. I'm not from West Virginia like you are, Mr. West Virginia.
Not everybody can be. Not everybody can be.
That's a great place to be. Okay, let's talk about the memo.
Yes.
Shall we? Hogan's trying to be a little cagey with us.
Right.
We think we're going to get it tomorrow.
Right.
We think that's what's going to happen. So Andy McCarthy, former federal prosecutor, wrote this piece in National Review Online. And here's what he said. He says, Nunes and the Intelligence Committee have gone about things the right way, not leaking, conducting oversight, and carefully handling classified information so that the things the public should know are disclosed without compromising vital intelligence and its sources. Yet Democrats are condemning the process, and much of the media seems strangely indifferent, if not opposed to disclosure. Agree or disagree?
I think that's true, but I also think that the larger context here is, so Democrats started with pernicious leaking, obvious and pernicious leaking on the Russia probe to try to paint the Trump administration, the president is a puppet of the Kremlin and all of this stuff. And that was a very obvious and intentional act by Democrats. And then the Republicans are now responding with an escalation, and this escalation is going right at it is very obvious that the target here, it is impossible to miss that the target here is Rod Rosenstein, who is the linchpin right now at the Justice Department. Jeff Sessions is substantially marginalized. Now you've got Rod Rosenstein. He's the guy. Looks pretty obvious that Trump might like to pry him out. The memo creates, it has different constituencies. So there are civil libertarians who like the memo because it's going to make it harder on mass surveillance. They don't like mass surveillance in any port in a storm. If these people want to help them get the memo out, they want the memo out because they want to hurt that part of mass data collection. Then there are the people who are doing it for political reasons, that are trying to either discredit the Mueller investigation or even start firing people at the FBI, pushing them out. Then you have people who want clarity, they want answers. I'll tell you where I think this all ends up. I think this all ends up that everything's coming out. It's all coming out. The Republican one, the Democratic one, and all the testimony back up the semi, and we're going to have a document deluge over the next couple months.
Well, and Andy McCarthy, this is not the McCarthy referenced by former FBI Director Comey. Different McCarthy.
I don't think he has similar feelings.
No. I think that they're very different. But he did say the Democrats' memo should, as long as it meets the classification and intel requirements, that one should come out too. And he's saying the FBI should write one of its own. If it has problems with either or both of these, they should do one of them.
I have a memo, but it's really just a delicious recipe for ribs, and that's all it really is. Or Slim Jims. That's right.
All right.
That's right.
Happy Friday Eve.
Happy Friday Eve.
Good to see you. All right, U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Nikki Haley, offering up a scathing indictment of Russia during an address to congressional Republicans today. She also argued the Trump administration has been tougher on Russia than any administration since President Reagan's.
We've sent advanced weapons to Ukraine. We have not lifted a single sanction on Russia, and in fact, we've expanded sanctions against them. We've expelled Russian diplomats. I have no idea what Russia expected from the American elections, but I gotta tell you, they're not happy with what they ended up with.
Haley repeatedly said Russia is not our friend, adding they will never be if they continue their course of action on the world stage. Well, all this memo drama for many has turned into quite a melodrama. But what about the rank and file inside the FBI? Our next guests are uniquely qualified to discuss the impact this is all having on bureau morale. And just what the heck's going on in this video, check it out. Trace Gallagher is reporting on one of the biggest stories in Southern California. Plus, closure in the case of one conservative group targeted by the IRS for 7 years. We're going to talk to the lead plaintiff who stood up to the agency under the Obama administration. Former FBI Director James Comey tweeting out tonight his support for the FBI for, quote, speaking out. And he's also invoking Joe McCarthy in the process. So how is the memo drama playing out within the FBI? As you can see here, one of my next guests is well acquainted with the former FBI director. Derek Maltz is a former DOJ official who oversaw special operations for the DEA. And Dan Bongino is a former Secret Service agent, former NYPD officer. Gentlemen, welcome to both of you.
Thank you, Shannon.
Be here.
Great to have you with us. I want to read something that came from the FBI Agents Association today, saying that they appreciate FBI Director Chris Wray standing shoulder to shoulder with the men and women of the FBI as we work together to protect our country from criminal and national security threats. Special agents take a solemn oath to our country and to the Constitution, and the American public continues to be well served by the world's preeminent law enforcement agency. Dan, how careful do we have to be to make sure that even in covering these things, that it's not decimating morale?
We have to be very careful. I mean, the men and women of the FBI that I worked with during my time in the Secret Service are the finest people I have ever worked with, Shannon. I say that with no reservation. And my hat's off to all of you doing great work out there, keeping bank robbers, computer criminals off the street. But let's be clear, Shannon, about what happened here. A select group of upper-level managers at the FBI violated protocols to spy on the Trump team. Keep in mind, the spying onto the Trump team is not in dispute, Shannon. It's only the method by which it happened that is still in dispute that may be cleared up tomorrow by the memo. But what they did in our name, the American people, a lot of the FBI agents I know are ashamed of it. I have a really good contact on this as well.
And Derek, you're hearing from folks too. What are you hearing about how they feel?
Yeah, I have a long history with the FBI. When I was the head of the Special Operations Division, my deputy was an FBI agent. I had counterterrorism folks. And the morale is hurting right now. They're very embarrassed. I mean, look at the seal of the FBI: fidelity, bravery, integrity. Integrity is a big part of their culture, their history. They're very proud. So for the upper management of the FBI to breach that trust, right, and to actually conduct themselves in such an unprofessional manner, I mean, there's no place for that in the FBI. And it's really, really a shame. But you know what? They're very excited with the naming of the new, acting deputy, David Bowditch. He's a career success story. He's worked criminal investigations. He's got the respect of the troops, not just in the FBI, but all the other agencies. He ran a gang task force out in California with multiple agencies taking down Hell's Angels, the Bloods, the Crips. So the guy has earned his stripes, as we say in law enforcement.
And that'll definitely, as you said, be an encouragement to the people you're talking with and that are happy about him coming. I want to read something from a former special agent, Ali Soufan, and the Daily Beast today, saying this over the release of the memo and everything that's going on. Many honorable men and women should be prepared to resign, to walk out over this. Dan, what do you make of that?
Shannon, a candidate for president of the United States was spied on. Do the American people understand what happened here? Now, listen, to be clear on this, to spy on people using law enforcement is not illegal. It is illegal, however, to spy on people illegally. You have to get a warrant producing probable cause in a criminal case, or you have to get a warrant in an intelligence case through the FISA courts that there's probable cause someone is acting as a foreign agent in violation of U.S. law. Shannon, I'm asking the question to the audience. Where's the probable cause? Produce for me a scintilla of evidence that either one of those two things happened, that a crime was committed or that someone on the Trump team was acting as a foreign agent in violation of U.S. law while on the Trump team and advising Trump. You can't. because it didn't happen, and the public is entitled to know. We do still live in a constitutional republic.
We do. We're just out of time, Derek, but I want to ask you, do you think that the release of the memo will help or hurt the restoration of Americans' confidence in the FBI?
From my perspective, the public deserves full accountability, full transparency, and the government has to produce these type of documents so they can make their own decision in the public. I don't know what the memo says. I don't know what's going to be released. But I believe, regardless of what the details are, the public deserves the truth.
All right. Well, wait, maybe tomorrow morning, as early as then, we will see. Derek and Dan, thank you both very much for staying with us and your service to the country as well.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
All right, new developments tonight with the Veterans Group ad targeting all those NFL players who take a knee during the anthem. State lawmakers taking action ahead of the big game. Stick around for more on that. Shocking viral video sweeping Southern California and beyond tonight. Trace Gallagher joins us with details behind this late-breaking story. It's confusing. Trace, I know you'll explain it for us.
Yeah, Shannon, the city of San Pedro in southern Los Angeles County has long complained of a rise in the number of homeless. Some believe the homeless are being dropped off there. So when two sheriff's deputy patrol cars pulled up along the street side late Tuesday, Mike Oliveri pulled out his cell phone and began to video. What he captured were deputies opening the car door and letting out a man that Oliveri says was obviously homeless, disheveled, and mentally ill. After the video was posted on social media, it stirred some outrage, especially with L.A. City Council member Joe Buscaino, who represents San Pedro. Buscaino called it appalling and disturbing and immediately called for an investigation. Watch.
I'm looking for accountability in a time where we just cannot pawn off mental health issues to other municipalities.
But the L.A. County Sheriff's Department says this is not a case of dumping, it's a case of compassion, saying deputies went out of their way to help the man. The department claims the man told deputies his name and asked for a ride to Pasadena, some 25 miles away. Instead, the deputies saw the man had a bus pass and took him to a bus stop 4 miles away. Here's the deputy's office.
When you're in a car and you're voluntarily there, we have to let you out when you want to get let out. So when he got to a particular point close to the bus stop, a couple blocks away, he said he wanted to be let out, and our deputies obliged.
Well, deputies knew the man had an outstanding warrant for failing to appear, but because of jail overcrowding, they rarely arrest people for minor violations. Councilmember Buscaino isn't buying the whole compassion explanation, saying they should have taken the man for help. And finally, Shannon, I want to update you on a breaking news story we covered all day today. A shooting at a middle school near downtown Los Angeles. A 12-year-old girl was arrested for opening fire, but now investigators say the shooting appears to be accidental, though it's still unclear where the girl got the gun, why she brought it to school, and how she got it on campus. A 15-year-old boy was shot in the head. He remains in critical but stable condition. 15-year-old girl was shot in the wrist. We're told that she is going to be just fine. Shannon.
Trace, thank you very much. Yeah. Congressman Adam Schiff unloads on President Trump. No surprise there. During a visit to the Ivy League, we're going to debate his claims that Republicans in Congress are helping the president undermine our very democracy. And we'll tell you why one Vermont school is sparking outrage over how it's chosen to honor Black History Month. Still to come in our Real News Roundup. Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee accusing President Trump and congressional Republicans of being threats to democracy during a speech today at the University of Pennsylvania. Here's what Adam Schiff had to say.
Most painful realization of the last year for me has not been what kind of President Donald Trump has turned out to be, which I think was sadly predictable, but rather how many members of Congress would be complicit in the undermining of our democracy. That has been a bitter truth to swallow.
Ali Stuckey is the conservative millennial, and David Catanese is a senior political writer for U.S. News and World Report. Welcome to both of you.
Hey, Shannon.
Thank you. I want to read a little bit more of what Congressman Schiff had to say today. He said the occupant of the Oval Office is not the least bit of a champion for democracy. The threat from Russia to our democracy is now far less than the threat from within. Ali, are you surprised to see that, or is that just kind of where the vitriol is now? That's the conversation we've gotten to on both sides.
Yeah, I'm not really surprised at all. And, you know, I don't know what's in the memo, and I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. What I do know is that the behavior of Adam Schiff and of the Democrats, their absolute insistence upon covering up the information that is in this memo, is not a good look for their side of the case. If there is truly nothing to hide, then I say stop hiding. And what I also find to be more suspicious and incriminating about this is that the Democrats and Adam Schiff are sticking up for the FBI at all. Was it not just a couple years ago in 2016 that they were slamming the FBI for supposed bias against Hillary Clinton? And that was justifiable. But now when Republicans are raising legitimate concerns about malfeasance, it's, quote, undermining democracy. Spare me.
All right, well, let's play a little bit then of what the House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi had to say today about this idea that this memo is going to come out.
If he were to release that memo, he would not only be endangering our country, but he would also be violating the rules of the Congress of the United States.
David, is that accurate? Because listen, I'm no expert on the minutia of the parliamentary procedures up there with the committees and that kind of thing, but I've read several accounts that say basically this thing is working its way through the way it should, that it goes to the president. If he doesn't object, or if there are modifications, it goes back to the committee, they can release it. Is the minority leader accurate there when she says this is against the rules?
There's a process in place for this to occur, and I think that process is happening, and I think it's why we haven't seen the memo yet. I would just say that just playing those quotes, I mean, you can play Devin Nunes quotes. This whole process has become so politicized. I think at this point, I think it was a tougher call maybe a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago. At this point, everything has to be released. Remember, there's not only a Republican memo, there's a Democratic memo. I think you could even go further and release the FISA applications. So everything's out there. And the American people are smart. This has been so politicized that if all the information comes out, people are going to be able to make their own decisions if there was malfeasance against Donald Trump, if Devin Nunes made edits to this memo, the Democrats can respond to that. But until we see it, until we see both sides, we're not going to really know.
Yeah, and maybe it does clear things up and take the political sting out of it for both sides. If everything's on the table for Americans who are savvy, who are smart, who can read through this material, it may be tough because, of course, there are going to be classified items that can't be divulged. Right. But if there is a memo on the other side, a lot of folks think release them both and let Americans decide. Now, somebody who has been consistent on this issue of government surveillance is Senator Rand Paul. Here's what he said today.
Think of your own personal lives and think if I'm the government, I come to you and I record 1,000 of your phone calls, private phone calls, then I bring you in before the FBI and say, what about that phone call you made 2 years ago? And describe, and if you don't describe it consistently, I'm going to put you in jail. That'd be a terrible world to live in.
I mean, it's an argument that brings a lot of people together across the spectrum. When you have Ron Wyden and Rand Paul and others on the same page about this, Allie, there is an argument to be made about us knowing more about government surveillance, how it works.
Absolutely. I think that transparency is necessary. What Rand Paul just described is a police state that's really an Orwellian world in which we are not free to think and believe what we want to think and believe. I don't think anyone on either side of the aisle really wants that. And quite frankly, I think that issue has kind of been lost in the politicization of all of this. We've been so concerned with the two competing narratives coming at us from Capitol Hill. The Democrats who think that this is just a distraction from the Russian investigation. The Republicans who might want to distract from the Russian investigation or may want to delegitimize it, that we've forgotten that this one issue does bring us together, that no one wants the government to invade that part of our lives.
David, quickly, do you think they can find some common ground on that issue of government surveillance?
I don't know if they're going to find common ground, but I would just say that, we need surveillance in this country to protect us against terrorism, to protect us against threats. In this case, allegedly, what the reports have been is that they were surveilling a Trump aide who was potentially having contacts with the Russians. Now, we don't know what the evidence was behind.
Unverified information.
Well, we don't know because we haven't seen what they used to get the FISA warrant. But we're talking about Carter Page, who was in the Trump campaign. Then supposedly the Russian government was trying to flip him. Now, do you think that is that a legitimate use of surveillance? I think a lot of Americans, if an American was going to be turned on the other side to be, to go to the other side to aid another country, we would want surveillance in those cases. We don't want them in our private lives. I don't want government surveillance on me. But if someone is acting in a way that might be betraying the country, I think more Americans would support surveillance
That's
in
true.
that instance.
And I think what they want more than anything is just to know how it's being used and how this is being done. All right, Allie and David, we'll all stand by for the memo, we think, tomorrow. Thank you both.
Thanks, Shannon.
Thank you.
All right, time now for our real news roundup. Days ahead of the big game, Georgia's taking a shot at the NFL in a unanimous vote. The Georgia State Senate condemning the league for turning down an ad from a veterans group. As you may recall, AmVets wanted to run a Please Stand ad that targeted players and others who may kneel during the national anthem. Well, today kicks off Black History Month. Celebrating the occasion, a high school in Vermont raised a Black Lives Matter flag today with full participation of school administrators and state legislators. Students at Montpelier High School, where 18 of 350 students are Black, took turns raising the BLM flag.
It's remarkable to be able to watch this student power to do something that is so critical and important for being sure that we do have inclusive education in the state of Vermont.
We're often reminded that, all lives matter, but people do forget in our culture that Black lives matter.
Vermont has a way of leading the charge. We've done it on a lot of major issues. I'm just so proud of the kids and the faculty here and the school board.
Meanwhile, in San Jose, in California, the city council voted to remove the statue of Christopher Columbus from City Hall. The council is giving the city's Italian community 6 weeks to remove the statue, or it's going into storage. Hispanic groups want it gone because they say Columbus is a symbol of European genocide. Well, the Lois Lerner era at the IRS back in the spotlight tonight. You'll remember the agency targeting conservative groups during the Obama administration. Tonight,